Have you ever thought about where Dementors in Harry Potter really came from? What if these terrifying creatures were more than just mindless servants of darkness? In today's video, you'll discover the chilling origins of Dementors, their terrifying power, and their true allegiances. Dementors are among the most nightmarish beings in the wizarding world. Even Death Eaters and Voldemort himself don't inspire the same primal fear as these floating spectres. They drain all happiness from the air, leaving only despair. Strangely enough, they weren't always on the side of darkness. In fact, for most of their history, they served the ministry of magic. But how could creatures this sinister ever be trusted by the forces of good? And why did wizards allow them to exist at all? Their origins are shrouded in mystery. The first known reference to Dementors dates back centuries, linked to the dark wizard Residian. He lived in a secluded castle near a wizarding village and used Dementors as his personal guards. But when the village refused his request to marry one of their own, he unleashed these monstrous creatures upon them. It was only through the Patronus charm that the villagers managed to drive them away. Centuries later, in the 15th century, Dementors appeared again, this time tied to the infamous island fortress of Azkaban. No one knows who built it, but by that time it was home to another dark wizard, Ecrizdis. He lured lost sailors to his island and tortured them for his own twisted amusement. Dementors thrived there, feeding on the victims' endless suffering. When Ecrizdis finally died, the Ministry discovered the fortress overrun with Dementors, stronger than ever. Destroying Azkaban was too dangerous. They feared the Dementors' revenge, so they simply left it untouched. How exactly Dementors reproduce remains a mystery. J.K. Rowling herself has offered conflicting explanations. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, she mentioned that Dementors multiply in misty weather. However, in an interview, she stated that they don't reproduce at all, but rather grow like fungi in places full of decay and despair. In the 17th century, Minister of Magic Damocles Roll saw an opportunity. Instead of fighting Dementors, he turned them into prison guards. Azkaban became the most feared wizarding prison, guarded by creatures that thrived on human suffering. Over the years, Dementors weren't just used for Azkaban. They were deployed to protect key locations, escort criminals, and even hunt down fugitives. The Ministry saw them as useful tools, rewarding them with the one thing they craved: human emotions. For decades, Dementors remained loyal to the Ministry. But when Voldemort returned, everything changed. He promised them something the Ministry never could: absolute freedom. No more restrictions, no more control. They could feast on human souls without limits, and so Dementors revolted, abandoned Azkaban, and swore allegiance to the Dark Lord. This betrayal allowed the escape of countless Death Eaters, and once Voldemort's influence reached the Ministry, Dementors grew more ruthless, administering the dreaded Dementor's kiss far more often. Only after Voldemort's final defeat were Dementors permanently banished from Azkaban. The Ministry replaced them with auras, ensuring that these soulless creatures would never hold power again. Dementors are nearly unstoppable. They consume every positive emotion, forcing their victims to relive their worst memories. Just being near them plunges people into darkness. When Dementors infest an area, despair follows. Their most feared attack, the Dementor's kiss, strips a person of their very soul, leaving behind only a lifeless shell. And the most terrifying truth? There is no known way to destroy them. Wizards can repel them with a Patronus, but complete eradication seems impossible. These creatures remain one of the greatest horrors of the Harry Potter universe, terrifying, relentless, and perhaps truly immortal. Have you ever thought about what happened to the Dementors after they were banished from Azkaban? What if their hunger only grew stronger, forcing them to seek new ways to feed? In today's video, you'll uncover the dark fate of the Dementors, where they went after Voldemort's fall, and whether they are truly gone for good. The Ministry celebrated their victory, believing they had finally rid the wizarding world of one of its greatest threats. But Dementors don't simply disappear. They had no master now, no prison to guard, and no steady source of suffering to sustain them. Their instincts drove them to wander, searching for any place where fear, misery, and despair thrived. Some hid in the darkest corners of the wizarding world, while others drifted into lands beyond the Ministry's reach. No longer bound by rules, they became more dangerous than ever. Rumors spread of isolated villages where entire families vanished overnight, their homes left untouched but eerily lifeless. Wizards sent to investigate found no signs of struggle, only an overwhelming sense of cold and emptiness. In the Muggle world, unexplained waves of depression swept through certain areas, leaving people unable to function, trapped in an unshakable despair. Healers struggled to explain it. The Ministry denied any involvement. But those who had faced Dementors before knew the truth. Desperate to contain the threat, the Ministry sent Aurors to track down any remaining Dementors. But the creatures had learned from their past mistakes. They moved in silence, avoiding detection, slipping into the shadows before anyone could react. Some Aurors never returned from their missions. Others came back, changed, haunted, broken, unable to describe what they had seen. Reports of Dementors sighted near wizarding settlements became more frequent. But without a prison to guard or a master to serve, what was their purpose now? Some believed they had found new leaders, dark wizards who sought to control them, just as Voldemort had. Secret gatherings in remote locations hinted at figures attempting to harness the Dementors' power. Their goal was unclear. Were they trying to use Dementors as weapons, unleashing them against their enemies? Or did they believe they could learn the secret of their existence, perhaps even find a way to control death itself? But Dementors do not serve willingly. They are not bound by loyalty or reason. They exist only to feed, to consume, to spread darkness wherever they go. Those who tried to command them soon realized their mistake. Some vanished without a trace. Others were found in a state worse than death, their eyes hollow, their minds shattered. It became clear that Dementors had no interest in serving anyone ever again. With no way to destroy them, the Ministry sought a different approach. They tried to contain them, forcing them into the most desolate places where few would ever encounter them. Forbidden forests, abandoned castles, underground tunnels, anywhere they could be sealed away from the world. But containing a force of nature is never simple. The Dementors were restless. They did not accept their exile. Strange disappearances continued. Entire communities felt the weight of an unseen force pressing down on them. Some wizards began whispering that the Dementors had grown even stronger in isolation. Without restrictions, they could now drain not just happiness, but something deeper. Some claimed they could strip away magic itself, leaving victims powerless and empty, unable to even cast a simple Lumos spell. If this was true, then they had become something far worse than they had ever been in Azkaban. Some witches and wizards devoted themselves to researching Dementors, hoping to find a way to defeat them once and for all. The most promising theory involved the Patronus charm. If Dementors thrived on fear and despair, could they be permanently weakened by overwhelming them with positive energy? Experiments were conducted, but the results were unsettling. While a Patronus could still repel Dementors, it had no lasting effect. The moment the charm faded, the creatures returned, hungrier than before. Another theory suggested that Dementors were not truly living beings at all, but rather manifestations of dark magic itself. If this was the case, then their existence could only be ended by unraveling the magic that created them. But there was no spell, no known incantation that could undo them. Their origins were lost to time. No one knew if they had been created intentionally or if they had simply emerged from the darkest corners of the wizarding world. A few believed that the only way to rid the world of Dementors was to starve them. If they could be forced into places where no emotions could be felt, no thoughts could be had, perhaps they would simply fade away. But how could such a place exist? Some spoke of cursed lands, voids where even magic struggled to survive. But sending Dementors there required controlling them, and no one had ever succeeded in doing so. The only certainty was that Dementors were not gone. They had not been destroyed, only displaced. The ministry still refused to acknowledge their continued presence, fearing panic. But those who had encountered them firsthand knew the truth. They were waiting, watching, learning. Some believe they will return when the wizarding world least expects it, stronger than ever. Others think they are already among us, hidden in places no one dares to look. The question